Hey everybody, how are you doing? We're looking at just a broad overview of 2026, kind of how the year begins and sort of the tenor of the year, based on the way I'm casting this chart. If you're an astrologer and you wonder why my what I'm saying may differ somewhat from what you may say, it's just in how I cast the chart, just so you know. Um, but I think it's going to seem familiar to a lot of astrologers, and it may sound familiar even if you're not into astrology at all, because the themes are very in your face, just in real life. So here we go. And again, this applies to all signs. Everything I say about the planets will apply to you personally in your own personal life, in addition to kind of society at large. So these influences are felt on a small level, meaning just individual humans, and a large level, meaning culture in the world. They're just pervasive through the year, just like in the summer, if you have a 101-degree day, and let's say that 101-degree day was all over the planet, everyone's experiencing the same 101-degree day. It's like that. So it's just like weather that impacts everybody. So here we go. The way I cast this particular chart, and we can feel it even if for astrologers, again, if you cast the chart slightly differently, you'll still feel these influences I'm going to talk about very strongly. So this chart that I'm looking at for 2026 is ruled by Pluto. And its secondary ruler is Uranus. And so in astrology, we look at alignments and how things connect to one another mathematically by, what degree by separation they are mathematically. And Pluto and Uranus are connected in such a way that they're working really tightly together. And what this means is that it makes these two energies, their influence kind of come out even more easily, especially when combined. They're really able to express themselves very quickly and easily. So we feel Pluto, we feel Uranus right now because they're not at odds. I mean, we would feel them if they were at odds too, but it would feel totally different and they wouldn't manifest as clearly and strongly as they are right now. So Pluto, a lot of people are scared of Pluto, and I understand why. When I first started studying astrology, it sounded kind of scary. But then the more you learn about it and experience it, and you start to understand what it's like, it's not scary. Um, Ultimately, it doesn't mean Pluto that everything happens under Pluto is good and puppies and raindrops and roses and kittens or what I don't know in there, but it's not all lollipops. And Pluto can feel quite challenging sometimes, as it is in the outer world. In the world at large, Pluto is felt right now, and perhaps not such a pleasant way. But what can be missed when looking at Pluto is the Persephone cycle. So Persephone, Pluto was a type of mythological god, and Persephone is a mythological character that is involved in the Pluto story. And Persephone, I think, is the more important piece of the Pluto story. It says way more about what actually happens in the real world because Persephone was at least half the year of the real world. Plus, she started in the real world, her character mythologically. So, briefly, she has a cycle through her own year, this character, where she spends half the year in the underworld where Pluto supposedly rules, and then she spends half the year up in the normal world. And she comes back up into the normal world in springtime. And then as we get toward fall and winter, again, she descends again into darkness. But what's important here is the cycle, that she's a cyclical um, metaphor, that there's always a cycle to life and to Pluto kinds of things. Pluto, at the end of the day, Pluto is about permanent, deep change. And Pluto change tends to happen very slowly over a number of years. So that sometimes you forget that the change is happening. You cannot be as aware of it on a day-to-day basis, but the change, if you looked back 5 years, if you looked back 10 years, you would be like, oh my gosh, there's been a huge change, especially where it hits your chart, wherever Pluto is hitting your chart. And so that's the thing to know, is that Pluto has been wherever Capricorn has been in your chart. That's where Pluto has been. And it's now in Aquarius, a different part of your chart, with a slightly different mission, as it had in Capricorn. Uranus, on the other hand, is about change. So Pluto and Uranus, both about change. Those are the two big change planets. Pluto, very slow, sometimes invisible, and Uranus, very like lightning, like a very quick, sudden change or a quick, sudden thing to happen. And it can feel very shocking and jarring, whereas Pluto, sometimes you don't even notice that it's happening. And I mean, you will at times feel this happening, but sometimes on some days you're just not even aware, or months could go by and you're not aware, or you kind of get oblivious to it or deadened to it. So two planets of change working really tightly together right now, creating a lot of change. And so as slow as Pluto can be, the fact that it's working with Uranus right now means everything's sped up and things can feel shocking and unexpected, even though you can kind of look back and see, oh, this has been happening for a long time. And this has been set up for a long time. It's just been kind of like the frog in the slowly boiling pot. And, but here I want to add that Pluto's not all about bad change, and Uranus is not all about bad, horrible change, although that can be the case. It's important with Pluto and Uranus to recognize that there can be underneath your life this ongoing change and shift that's really, really positive and taking you in a positive place, in a positive direction. This overall good, your whole soul growth is attached to this Pluto long, slow change, or on this conveyor belt of Pluto, but at a very deep fundamental level, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, physically, maybe sometimes there's this long, slow change that is for your highest good. Although it doesn't always feel like it or seem like it. But sometimes we can look back at things that seemed very, very difficult and challenging and see that they indeed led you to a good place or brought a lot of gifts, a lot of insight, joy, peace, just things you would never trade. If you knew you had to pay the price of Pluto, but you got these wonderful things, you would never undo that. You would want to pay the price of Pluto so that you could still have these things that grew in your life, sometimes kids or marriages or just spiritual depth. You would never trade it. So what comes with Pluto can be very valuable. You wouldn't want to trade it, but you had to go through some hardship. That's the Pluto gift. Uranus is not known for like darkness or anything like that. It can just be jarring. It can just be like a lightning strike, but it could be good. Like you could jarringly win the lottery. You can jarringly bump into your soulmate. You can jarringly get a job out of the blue at jarringly get a salary you never expected, so shocks to the system can be really positive. They're still a shock. So Uranus is very neutral. It can come with a shock, not so great surprise, and a shock, amazing surprise. And Pluto, again, even though darkness is tied to the Pluto cycle in a person's life, it's also tied to Persephone and coming back up into the light and growth and expansion in a happy way, in a way that feels good to the soul. And so both planets ultimately are bringing you in kind of in a divine way to where you're supposed to go. And so they do have your overall highest good in mind, but that sometimes means shocks to the system or challenges that we face. So those two planets are ruling, and they have been ruling and influencing the times that we're in. And they'll, as we go into 2026, yes, they are still there. And they're also working tightly, both these planets, as they are worked together, are also working very tightly with Saturn and Neptune. So let's talk about those two planets. So Saturn is about establishing order, some rules, some boundaries, and about learning and education. So it's your own learning that we're talking about here and how you learn lessons. And there's this connotation around the word lessons that it's negative somehow, like you have to learn your lesson. And but lessons learned can be very valuable, just like the Pluto gifts. They're things you wouldn't trade. Like you're glad you learned that lesson, and they serve you the rest of your life. Like those lessons learned serve you the rest of your life, and you're really glad you learned them. And sometimes the only way you learn a lesson is for it to feel challenging, so that it was challenging enough that you won't forget it. But it's ultimately about expanding your mind and growth in your understanding of the world. So that's Saturn. So structure, plans, boundaries, growth learning. And then Neptune is, and so if you had to, just by contrast to Neptune, if you had to use another word for Saturn, it would be like it's very real and graspable. It's solid. There's a solidity to Saturn and the way it feels and the lessons you learn, and boundaries by their definition are kind of solid. Uh, Knowledge can feel solid. So there's a solidity to Saturn. By contrast, it's conjunct for all intents and purposes this year to Neptune. And Neptune is the opposite. It's the opposite of solid. And so there's a slippery quality, a running through, water running through your fingers kind of quality, or sands through an hourglass, it just slips through kind of quality. It's permeable, and a lack of boundaries. It has a permeable boundary or no boundary, Neptune. And Neptune's also about, it can be about creativity and like your creative vision. And creativity can be any way your mind uses its imagination. So it's about the imagination roaming free. And it's about, it can, along with imagination, roaming free can come sometimes delusional thinking and illusion. And so there's that. So it can be like just create, this wonderful imagination, which is indeed a gift that we all possess, that you possess. It's great that you have your imagination. It can veer at times into delusional thinking and not having a firm grasp, because it's not graspable, Neptune, not having a firm grasp of reality and getting a little too far away from having your feet on the ground, which Saturn absolutely has its feet planted into with roots into the ground. And so it's an interesting thing, these two planets working together and a little bit at odds as they are conjunct. They're kind of pushing at each other. But they're working beautifully with Pluto, what Pluto's doing, and Uranus, but with each other, they're pushing at each other. They're really at odds. There's such different planets and energies. And so what does this all mean? So we already talked about how Pluto and Uranus about change, slow change, fast change, shocks to the system, the cycle of darkness into light, darkness into light, lightness into dark. So that cycle, which always keeps moving, it never stops. It never gets stuck in darkness. It never gets stuck in the light. It's always moving. That's the Pluto-Uranus thing going on right now. And keep in mind, if you feel like things are dark in your life or around you, I'm not contesting that. There is darkness out there. There is definitely darkness out there. And there may be darkness in your own life very personally. That is absolutely there. And I'm not trying to mess with the fact that you've gone through real experiences or experiencing real things that feel very dark. But I just do want to keep you in mind that life moves in cycles. And there is light. And if you think of the yin yang symbol, within the light, there's always a little seed of darkness. Within the darkness, there's always a little seed of light, and it's always shifting and moving. And so just keep a hold of that. If you feel stuck in darkness or you're losing hope, remember that it's a cycle, and there can be the springtime, and there's a promise with Pluto of springtime and coming out of the dark always. It's always there. Now, if we look at Saturn and Neptune, what we're looking at in your chart is a part of your chart where you may have been experiencing some delusional thinking and a little bit of lack of boundary, not things being a little slippery. So if it's in your money sector, maybe it's been hard for you to grasp money coming and going, and you haven't had good boundaries on your money. And then Saturn comes in with things like bills and deadlines to pay things and obligations, and it fights with the part of you that is just like, ooh, money, woo, do whatever. It's pushing in and making you aware. For example, I'm just using money as an example because most people can kind of relate, that Saturn's coming in and saying you need some structure, you need some planning, have a system in place, put up some boundaries to help you with this. Woo! I mean, it's great to kind of use your imagination around your money and kind of create the life you want. There's this idea of manifesting an abundance. That's all well and good. And it needs to be coupled usually with some kind of system for making it work for you rather than against you. And that's Saturn coming in with some common sense, some grounded practices, some boundaries, just to make sure things aren't always slipping through your fingers. Any dreams don't just slip through your fingers because you're not bringing any groundedness to this area. And love, and when I was an astrologer, it was most of my clients were lovesick. They were under the spell of Neptune. And under the spell of Neptune, they were a little, it wasn't just imagination about another person, but it was kind of delusional illusion. There was some illusion there where they weren't seeing things clearly, and their behaviors, if Saturn wasn't working with them or for them, their behaviors were kind of reflecting that. And what was hard in talking to these clients is Neptune's very strong. If someone's stuck in a Neptune spell or delusion, it's very hard to wake them up. I mean, you just want to clap your hands in front of their face, like, wake up, wake up. Or one astrologer said she just wished she could take a cold bucket of ice water and just put it over their head to wake them up from this love spell that can happen. So if it was hitting an area to do with relationships and love, some of you may have been struggling with some delusional thinking. And along with that, because everyone's had love sickness at some point and been a little delusional around some quest and love. And there's a part of your brain that always understands that that's what's happening. In fact, when people would come to me, they would say things like, I know, like they knew, but they were still under the spell. So the spell was still there and they knew they were under a spell, but they couldn't seem to break free of it. And Saturn can actually help here. It just like with the money thing where it comes in and says, hey, it's time to pay your bills. Saturn will come in and to this Neptunian area of your chart and say, so maybe some boundaries. Like, have you thought about what are some ways you can break free of the spell? Like maybe spend some parts of your day not focused on this. That would be like a very practical thing, like set up other things to do, other things to pay attention to, like go outside, garden, go see friends, but don't talk about your love interest. Like that's off limits. Ask them how they're doing, get involved in other people's lives, connect with other people other than this lovesick object, and do other things to distract yourself and create some boundaries with your time and attention is a way to combat a problematic love spell that seems to have taken over your brain. And I only laugh because I've gone through it and I've just worked with so many people and they know they desperately want help with it. So we just have to understand about Neptune influence, whether it's with your money or in love or anywhere. It could be you're under delusional thinking about your job, your career. You could be caught in some kind of illusion where you think everything's about climbing the ladder and you can't see beyond that. Other people can see that you're obsessed with the ladder and climbing the ladder, the corporate ladder or the academic ladder or whatever ladder you're climbing. And you can't seem to see anything else in your life, your kids, your friends. And other people are like, why are they so, they're deluded, they're under the spell of climbing the ladder. So it can impact any part of your life. Some people are too obsessed with their children and they can't seem to separate themselves from their children, even for parts of the day, even just in their brains. And so that's how Neptune can come in and take over. But with Saturn there, Saturn's actually, even though there's some tension with it meeting Neptune, it's helping the Neptunian influences. So out in culture, you may or may not be thinking some people are in a cult. Why are all these people so delusional and not seeing reality? Well, that's Neptune. But Saturn is there. Like there's reality, there's the bill to pay. And so there is help with that astrologically. There is, even though like with Pluto change, it can be slow and hard to see, it's there. The change is happening where it's harder and harder to hold some delusional thinking, and Saturn can come in and help. And let me say, like, about relationships and about money in a chart, just to show you how I want to be clear that some people are a little overly gaga about a love interest. And if they're just solely under the influence of Neptune and there's no assistance with that and they can't bring themselves back down to earth, they kind of scare away that love interest. Whereas if they had mechanisms and methods for grounding themselves and becoming less and less obsessed and more just interested, but separate from, able to separate themselves, the love connection might work. But when you're just totally under Neptune, people can sense it, even if they don't know that's what happened. They sense that you're under a spell and they want to get as far away as possible, even if they really like you. Same with money. Money wants to help you. Money wants to come into your life, but there's an energy around Neptune. If you go too far down the path and spiral into it without grounding yourself and trying to save yourself with, using whatever methods you can, money seems to want to flee. And so there's an energy to being too sick under the spell. Like if you think of people who've been in cults or people you think are just under some kind of thought spell, you want to be away from them because they're scary. You don't want to be around them. But if you see that same person who seems to be in a cult-like mentality, start the glimmers of common sense come through, or they start to want to understand, or they start to want to have empathy, then you want to come toward them because you can see them coming out of it. So this push-pull is going on all around us. It's going on in our own lives. Um, and it's interesting, isn't it? So there's a new start quality to those Neptune and Saturn because once again, they did it last year, but they'll do it again this year. They'll go into Aries, and that's a huge set point and start point where things can shift dramatically. So as things change, they can look unfamiliar and things can feel uncertain. But in your own life, just trust that if you're using Saturn, so if you're using boundaries and structure and you're expanding your own mind and learning more knowledge alongside keeping your imagination, your innovation, and your hope alive, your dreams alive, alongside planning, alongside reality, you bring those two together, it's very powerful. So it's an engine you can use in your own life, wherever Aries hits your chart, to really create some amazing change that involves using, don't be scared of your imagination. Don't be scared of the magic of dreaming. Uh, and don't be scared of setting boundaries. When I talk about setting Saturn boundaries, unless you're in a very extreme situation, if you're in danger and someone's a danger to you, you need walls of steel boundaries. But a lot of the times, you just need little teeny nudges to keep on your path, to stay grounded and focused, little teeny boundaries. You don't need to be either or, like walls of steel and nothing. You can have little teeny weeny boundaries and it can be okay. Again, I think a lot of relationships could actually work that where one person's a little bit overly obsessed if that person can ground themselves and stay grounded. Anyway, wherever, look at your chart and see where Aries is, see where Neptune and Saturn are. This is the area where things can really take off in a cool direction. And again, all change feels a little alarming, a little scary, just because you don't always know what's coming. But Saturn can help you create a plan and help give you a little guidance, keep you grounded while you also dream big. Go ahead and dream big. It's okay. With Pluto and Uranus, understand that there's certain parts of your life where Pluto is in Aquarius and where Uranus, well, currently it's in Taurus. It's going to be shifting into Gemini. But in these two areas, that change is needed. And well, the two areas of Uranus, Taurus, Gemini, but also excuse my cough, Aquarius, you need change in these areas, and these planets will bring it about. And probably, even though Pluto moves slowly, it's probably going to show up a little more quickly under this particular cycle. So look at where those are. Those areas do need to change. And the change, again, could feel scary. And sometimes it involves letting go of things that you don't want to let go of or that you're scared to let go of. Sometimes that's a part of it. Sometimes you have to grieve something that's gone and understand that something new can come up, like in the Persephone cycle. Something new can grow. Something new can grow. And it can be a very powerful, positive change that's been seeded and can grow. I guess it's in a way, it's not that we want to cave in and totally succumb to darkness. We don't. But understanding that it's just a cycle, that darkness, you're never really stuck there. It is a cycle and the light is coming. And start to look toward that. How do you want to innovate your life in this maybe feeling of a dark time? How do you want to innovate things? What's your vision for how you want change to be in your life? And use that Neptune dreaming and dream big. Use Uranus to be visionary, and understand you have the power to make changes. If you use Saturn, you're realistic, you have boundaries, you're expanding your knowledge. You're not just basing this on past knowledge that may be stale. You're expanding your knowledge. Jupiter is working with especially Jupiter is working with Saturn and Neptune, but in essence is working with all these planets. And we haven't talked about Jupiter yet. Jupiter is going to be switching from Cancer to Leo in the middle of the year. So these two areas of your chart where Cancer and Leo are areas where there's expansion and a focus for you. But really, it's interesting how Jupiter is working with Saturn and Neptune. And Jupiter shares some qualities with both Neptune and Saturn. Jupiter shares with Saturn a focus on knowledge and expanding your mind and always growing, your brain capacity and being open to learning more always. These two planets really emphasize that, to stay open-minded, to keep learning new things, mostly being open. And Jupiter is helping you do that. And it's especially touching the area, it's finishing out these planets are finishing out a water sign emphasis where Pisces and Cancer are in your chart. And then they're moving into fire. They're moving into Aries and Leo. And mid-year, things will really take off and move quickly in terms of your learning, your growth, how you use these two planetary energies of Saturn and Jupiter to really propel yourself forward. So look where those are in your chart. And Neptune's a big part of the story. So continuing, keep the dream alive. Whether you just want a loving relationship, be open. It's an open and being growth oriented in your mind and open. Maybe it's not the person you're focused on. Maybe it is, if you can get your boundaries set and use those boundaries and stay grounded. Maybe it is that person, and you can change your behavior so they're not terrified of you. And or maybe what's happening is you're learning about love and how strongly you can feel, and maybe it's someone else. Be prepared mid-year, maybe something else opens up, another relationship, and you're just preparing for that. But you have to stay open for all of that to transpire. You have to stay open. If you can make the object of your desire work, you have to be open to changing your own behavior and grounding yourself. Or if you like the idea that your love life could take off mid-year, it's also important. And I'm just using this as an example. This could be about your money. If you want your money life to take off mid-year, if you want your career to take off, if you want your housing situation to take off in a fun new direction, you've got to stay open and not overly focus on one thing. There's like an over focus sometimes with Neptune where we can't see anything else. And that can include staying stuck in a dark, pessimistic point of view. What's happening here in this chart is there's so many zaps to your brain here, so many zaps to people's way of thinking about life. What's being asked is you rethink your vision of the world and something new, and not staying stuck in the past, not staying stuck in one way of thinking, but we're really being called to innovate and dream big, but in a realistic way, using different tools, expanding our knowledge so that we're not stuck in some old way of thinking. That's really what's happening. And it's happening, on an individual scale and globally. And so that's 2026. But I do want you to know, with all this change and a lot of big stuff going on, heavy duty energies that are impacting all of our systems and our brains, the focus can be positive and good things can happen if we follow some of the things we talked about, which is using the tools of Saturn, staying open and continuing to grow our knowledge, and open to new knowledge and different kinds of knowledge, not just the old resources, listening to the past influences. It's really innovating on all levels. So innovation, creation, expanding our minds, and understanding that everything works in a cycle, that it's never just darkness, there's always light. And that really, I believe we have a loving universe and it has our backs at all times. It's just sometimes growth and challenge is a part of that. Lessons are a part of that. So I hope this helps. I know things can seem really rough right now for a lot of people, and that's a reality, and that's not something we can turn our vision and sight away from. There are some tough things going on. There's also always light, and there's always the cycle, the Persephone cycle. There's always innovation and growth, and the ability to imagine something wonderful and actually manifest that. So happy New Year.